You don't wake up one morning and realize your marriage is over. It doesn't crack like a plate. It fades like color in an old photograph. One day you just look over, and the person lying next to you feels like a stranger. And somehow you're more surprised by your own numbness than by the distance itself. Her name is Rachel. We've been married 20 years. We met in college. Orientation week. She was wearing this oversized hoodie, messy ponytail, holding a broken map of campus like it was a lifeline. I offered to walk her to her class. She smiled, a little embarrassed, and said, "Only if you don't get us more lost." That was her, always self-aware, always in control of the chaos around her. We dated all through school, married at 25, bought our first house at 29, had our son Luke when I was 31. Our daughter Emma came 4 years later. Life had a rhythm: work, soccer practices, dinner routines, quick getaways when we could afford them. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Stable, predictable, safe, and somewhere along the way, we mistook safe for enough. The first signs were so subtle I blame myself for noticing them. She started going to bed earlier, not in a dramatic, "I'm mad at you" way, just quietly, brushing her teeth while I was still downstairs. Lights off before I even changed into sweatpants. When I kissed her goodnight, she turned slightly. Not enough to reject me, just enough to avoid real contact. A shift of the jaw, a different angle, like her lips had somewhere else to be. I'd ask, "Long day?" She'd nod. "Just tired," she'd mumble. And that would be it. No fight, no discussion, no drama, just silence. We stopped having real conversations. You know the kind, the ones after the kids are asleep, when you sit on the couch and really see each other. Instead, we talked about homework, groceries, school emails, logistics. We became managers of a household, not partners in a life. I started working later, not because I had to, just because it felt easier than sitting in that silence. She started joining more group chats, PTA stuff, book club, girls' wine nights. I didn't mind. I figured she needed the break. Then one name started popping up more than the rest. Ethan. He was a fellow parent from our daughter's school, single dad, moved to town 2 years ago, worked in some kind of digital media, one of those jobs where you can work from anywhere. I met him once briefly. He seemed fine, quiet, friendly, smart, but I didn't think twice. Why would I? I trusted Rachel. She started mentioning him casually. Ethan helped with the fundraiser spreadsheet. Ethan said that new bakery on Main Street is great. Ethan dropped off Emma after the meeting. I didn't have time. At first I felt nothing. Why would I? But then I noticed how her tone changed when she said his name. Not flirty, not guilty, just warmer, softer, like the way she used to talk about me. That was the first time I felt it, that tightening in the gut. But I brushed it off, because to acknowledge it would mean questioning her, and I wasn't ready to go there. One night I came home late from work. She was on the couch, curled up in a blanket, headphones in, phone in hand, smiling. Not the polite smile she gave me, a real one, the kind where her eyes crinkle. I stood there for a second, watching her. She didn't even notice I was home. When she finally looked up, she pulled one earbud out and said, "Hey, didn't hear you come in." I asked, "Who were you talking to?" She hesitated. Just a beat. Book club group chat. Sarah sent another meme. She laughed, but it felt rehearsed. I kissed her on the forehead and went upstairs. Lying in bed that night, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly. That's when it hit me. It wasn't that she was doing anything wrong. Not yet. It was that I was no longer the person she turned to for joy. That smile, the real one, it didn't belong to me anymore. And the scariest part? I didn't even know when I'd lost it. Infidelity doesn't always begin with a kiss. Sometimes it begins in bed, while your partner lies beside you, typing something they won't let you see. You think they're tired, or stressed, or lost in a group chat. But deep down, your gut is screaming. And still, you do nothing, because naming it makes it real, and you're not ready for real. It was a Tuesday night when I first truly felt him in the room with us. Not physically, He wasn't there, but somehow it felt crowded in our bedroom, like I was the third person, not the second. Rachel was in bed before me, propped up on pillows, her legs under the blanket, phone in hand, smiling to herself. The smile was what broke me. Not because it existed, but because it had nothing to do with me. She didn't even look up when I walked in. I said something lame. I think it was, "Crazy day, huh?" She nodded, still typing, then muttered, "Yeah, lots going on with the fundraiser." That was her latest obsession, the school fundraiser, the one Ethan was helping with. He was always helping, always around. That night, while brushing my teeth, I looked at myself in the mirror and actually said out loud, "She's talking to him right now." And somehow, hearing myself say it made it worse. I didn't accuse her, didn't confront her, just got in bed, turned off the light, and laid there. Eyes open, ears tuned to the soft clicks of her fingers on the screen beside me. At some point, she turned over, still scrolling, back facing me. And that's when it hit me. We were facing away from each other in every possible way. The next morning, I waited until she left for her early yoga class. She always left her iPad charging next to the bed. I never looked through her stuff, never even thought about it before. But that day I opened it. Her messages were synced. I know, I crossed a line. But part of me needed to know if I was going crazy. I didn't find nudes, no "I love you" texts, no confessions. But what I found hurt worse. It was comfort, familiarity, inside jokes, late night chats about how hard marriage can be, her venting about feeling unseen, and him replying, "It's because he stopped looking." There was one message from her, time-stamped 11:52 p.m., while I was lying next to her, wide awake. "Sometimes I feel like the only time I'm really heard is when I talk to you," he replied. "That's because I actually listen." That was it. No sex, no kisses, no confessions. But something about that exchange made me physically sick, like I just read a love letter my wife wrote to someone else, in our bed, while I was inches away. I sat on the edge of the mattress and stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I wanted to read more, I couldn't stomach it, but because I couldn't understand how I let it get here. I blamed work. I blamed routine. I blamed stress, money, kids, time. But in truth, I stopped listening. I stopped being present, and someone else, Ethan, walked right into that silence, and she let him. I didn't bring it up that day, or the next. I was a coward, maybe, or maybe I just didn't want to force a conversation that would end in something I couldn't undo. Instead, I acted normal, asked how her day was, kissed her cheek, watched her smile fade quickly and turn into distraction. She didn't look at me with guilt. She didn't look at me at all. And I started realizing something even darker. She didn't think she was doing anything wrong. To her, it was just texting, just talking, just being seen. But to me, it felt like the beginning of the end. There's a sound in your head when something breaks. It's not glass or thunder. It's quieter. A click. Like the moment you lock a door from the outside knowing you won't go back in. That night, when she didn't come home, I heard it. It was a Thursday. Nothing special. Just one of those painfully average days that ends up marking the timeline of your life forever. Rachel had a school fundraiser meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. She kissed the kids goodnight, grabbed her coat, and said, "I might stay late. We have to finalize the vendor stuff." I said, "No problem." "Want me to keep dinner warm?" She smiled distractedly. "No, they're bringing pizza." That smile, it wasn't warm. It wasn't cold either. It was just polite. The kind of smile you give a neighbor, not a husband. She left, and I stared at the door for longer than I should have. 8:30 p.m. I sent her a text. "All good over there?" No response. 9:15 p.m. I called. No answer. Straight to voicemail. 9:45 p.m. She finally replied, "Sorry." Just wrapping up, it ran long. Normal, right? Totally reasonable. Except that text felt wrong. Like it was written before I called. Like she was ready to send it. To cover something. I didn't reply. 10:28 p.m. I was on the couch, the TV on mute, scrolling through Instagram like a zombie. I checked Find My iPhone, something we always had on for the kids' safety. She had disabled location. My stomach dropped. It was the smallest thing, but it screamed. We'd had that feature on for years, never questioned it, never even used it much. But that night, office. At 10:41 p.m., the front door finally opened. I didn't get up, didn't say anything. She walked in slowly, placed her bag down, and acted like nothing had happened. Sorry, or it really did go long. Vendors were a mess. I nodded, didn't speak. She kissed me on the forehead. It felt like a goodbye. She changed clothes and went straight to bed. I stayed downstairs. Just sat there staring at nothing, as that cold, sinking feeling wrapped around my chest like ice. The next morning I tried again. How was the meeting? She shrugged. Tiring, boring, committee stuff. No mention of Ethan. No mention of who stayed late with her. No eye contact. That's when I knew. She wasn't telling me the truth, and she wasn't lying either. Not directly. She was just editing the truth until it fit a version of herself that didn't feel guilty. And that was worse. That evening I went for a walk. I ended up standing in front of a cheap motel just outside of town. Don't ask me why. Maybe I was trying to understand what it would take. How you go from inside jokes to late-night texts. From late-night texts to turning off location. From turning off location to crossing a line. Maybe I just wanted to know how close she was to it, or if she'd already gone further than I was brave enough to ask. I didn't confront her that night, or the next, again. Instead, I went into full pretend it's fine mode, the worst kind of manhood. I played catch with Luke. I made pancakes for Emma. I kissed Rachel on the cheek and said, "Sleep well." But I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay awake beside a woman who used to tell me everything, and now told everything to someone else. It only takes one notification, one buzz, one message that slips through because someone forgets to silence the lie. And just like that, everything you feared becomes something you can never unsee. It was Sunday morning. Kids were at a sleepover. The house was quiet. Rachel was in the shower, her phone charging on the nightstand. Screen up. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't even looking for anything. But the message preview lit up, and my eyes just landed on it. Ethan. Last night was everything. I can still feel you. That's it. One sentence. 17 words. But my entire world, 20 years of marriage, a house, 2 kids, dozens of holidays, hundreds of inside jokes, shattered before I could breathe. I froze, not because I didn't expect it, but because a part of me still hoped I was wrong. Even after all the signs, all the texts, all the late nights, I still prayed it was just emotional, just a boundary she was nearing, not crossing. But now, this wasn't a maybe. It was a confirmation, and there was no way to unknow it. She walked out of the bathroom minutes later, wet hair and a towel, humming. I was still sitting there, motionless. She looked at me, stopped. "You okay?" I didn't say anything, just looked down at her phone, still glowing. Her face changed instantly. She walked over, reached for it, but I didn't hand it to her. I simply asked, "How long?" Silence. Her hand trembled slightly, still stretched toward the phone. Then she exhaled, slowly, like something inside her deflated. It wasn't supposed to happen. That sentence made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. "When?" I asked again. "A few weeks ago." "Just once?" She hesitated. That pause gave me the real answer. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured coffee with hands that didn't feel like mine. She followed slowly. "I didn't plan it," she said. We got close. I felt seen. I felt alive again," I interrupted. "Wanted?" She nodded. "Do you love him?" She didn't answer, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't ask why, because I already knew. I knew I drifted. I knew we both stopped showing up. I knew I took her love for granted, but I didn't cheat. I didn't climb into someone else's arms to feel whole. I stayed. even in the silence. And she left, even while living in the same house. That day, I packed a small bag and drove to a hotel. Not because I was leaving for good, not yet, but because I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. Not with the ghost of her confession floating in every room. I didn't tell the kids. Not that day. I needed to understand who I was now, what kind of man I'd become. One thing was certain. Whatever came next, we could never go back to before. You think you're protecting them by keeping the volume low, by whispering behind closed doors, by pretending everything's fine. But kids don't hear words. They feel walls. And by the time you're ready to explain, they've already lived through the truth. I waited 3 days before I came back to the house. 3 long, sleepless nights in a 2-star motel room with burnt coffee and no answers. Rachel didn't text. She didn't call. She respected the silence, maybe for the first time in years. When I pulled into the driveway that Friday afternoon, Emma was sitting on the front steps, headphones in, hoodie up, legs tucked into her chest. She looked up, saw me, and didn't smile. Just gave a short nod and stood up. "Mom's inside." That was it. No hug, no excitement, just protocol. Luke was in the living room, gaming headset on, pretending not to see me. He used to jump on me when I got home from work. Now he just kept playing, eyes glued to the screen, jaw clenched tighter than usual. I walked into the kitchen. Rachel was slicing apples, like we were in a TV show where nothing bad ever happened. "Hi," she said. "There's coffee." I ignored it. I wasn't ready for pleasantries. "We need to talk to the kid," I said. "Today." She looked up, hesitated. "What are we telling them?" I stared at her. "The truth, or at least enough of it." She nodded. We sat them down after dinner. Emma picked at her nails. Luke crossed his arms and stared at the wall. I cleared my throat. "Your mom and I are having some problems." No reaction. "We're going to take some time apart. I'm staying at a hotel for now." Still nothing. I added, "This isn't about you. You didn't do anything wrong." And then Emma looked up, eyes cold, voice steady. "We know." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "We're not stupid," she said. "You guys haven't looked at each other in months." Luke finally spoke. "I heard Mom crying in the laundry room. Twice." Rachel closed her eyes. Emma added, "And I saw a message pop up on her phone once. From Ethan." "You smiled at it, Mom. I've never seen you smile like that for Dad." The room went quiet. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to yell. Not at them. At myself. At her. At everything we let rot while we smiled in family photos. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. Luke shrugged. "I didn't want to make it worse." Emma added, "I figured if you were both pretending, it wasn't my job to stop it." That crushed me. We thought we were sparing them. We thought we were managing the damage. But they'd been living inside the wreckage for months. Just quieter. That night I sat alone in the guest room. I stared at my phone, scrolling through photos, birthdays, vacations, Halloween costumes. So many smiles. So many fake smiles. I realized something no one tells you. Sometimes the deepest betrayal isn't the affair. It's how long you let the house burn before you admit it's on fire. I went to Luke's room later and sat on the edge of his bed. "You okay?" He didn't answer. "You're allowed to be mad at me," I said. "Even if I didn't cheat, I still failed. I wasn't the dad I should have been. Not lately." He stayed silent, then said, "I just want you to fix it." My heart cracked. "I don't know if I can." He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just turned over and faced the wall. The hardest part isn't the betrayal. It's waking up the next morning and realizing life goes on. Without permission, without pause. You still have to feed the dog, make coffee, go to work, as if your soul didn't just collapse. And that's what healing really is. Learning to move through ruins without pretending they were never there. A week later, I moved into a small apartment across town. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, terrible parking. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I bought a secondhand couch, a cheap TV, and a coffee machine I didn't know how to use right. The first night alone was brutal. Not because I missed Rachel. I missed routine. I missed being needed. I miss the illusion that everything made sense. And when that's gone, when the noise stops, what's left is silence and yourself. And sometimes that's the loudest thing of all. Rachel and I agreed on shared custody. The kids spent weekdays with her, weekends with me. Emma mostly stayed in her room. Luke kept asking when I was coming back home. I had no answers. All I could do was show up. Every weekend I cooked pancakes, drove them to soccer, watched Disney movies I didn't understand. And slowly they stopped being cold. They started talking again. Not much, but enough. Rachel and I don't talk unless it's about the kids. She's still seeing Ethan. I know because Emma mentioned him, by accident, then went quiet like she said a bad word. It didn't hurt like I thought it would, because by then I'd stopped bleeding. It's strange how pain doesn't just fade but calcifies, becomes part of your bones, not softer, just quieter. One night I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my teeth in that crappy little apartment, and I noticed something. I looked alive, not happy, not complete, but real, like a man who had been dragged through hell and crawled back up, scarred but breathing. I met someone months later, at the DMV of all places. She asked if I had the right form. I said, probably not. We laughed, exchanged names. Nothing dramatic, but it felt safe. And this time, I wasn't running from pain. I was walking towards something. I don't hate Rachel. I don't even blame her anymore. We both stopped trying long before she crossed the line. She just jumped first. I stood there and watched her walk to the edge. Would I ever trust again? Maybe. But now I know what trust actually costs and how sacred it is. If you're reading this because you think something's off in your marriage, it probably is. Don't wait for a text. Don't wait for a motel receipt. Don't wait for a voice that isn't yours to tell you what you already know. Talk. Look them in the eye. Say the scary thing, because silence doesn't save you. It just delays the collapse.